Hi, I'm Elizabeth Cronan with GamblingCompliance here in Washington, D.C., and I'm here with Keith Whyte, the Executive Director of the National Council on Problem Gambling. Keith, thank you very much for agreeing to speak with us today.
Good morning.
I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely.
It's great to have you. You know, I'm interested in getting some more insight on the bill that you introduced earlier this year, the organization is behind. And I'd like to know where the bill stands. I understand there are currently 62 co-sponsors?
We're actually up to 67.
67.
As of today, yeah, in the House and 4 in the Senate. Yeah, the Comprehensive Problem Gambling Act, really, we try to address what we believe was an oversight, in that the federal law that governs all federal health spending doesn't explicitly mention problem gambling. So in this day and age, a lot of the federal health agencies have said, well, because problem gambling is not specifically included, well, then we can't address it. So that leaves problem gamblers and their families, that leaves state governments, that leaves even the industry without any federal expertise to help address this issue, to minimize social costs, and help, obviously, states and operators maximize benefits. So we've had to go back and write a bill that would correct this by first authorizing the federal health agencies to do this. And we have a specific agency that we have in mind that does most federal substance abuse work. And the second part of the bill is obviously an authorization of appropriation, because in this day and age, even if you give an agency an authority but no additional money, either they're going to refuse to do it or they're going to take it out of someone else's account.
Sure.
And so we wanted to be good partners, and we wanted to say that because gambling does generate a lot of federal tax revenue, almost $7 billion in the past year, that's theoretically appropriate, that some public funds should go to help states prevent and treat problem gambling. So the bill as written is just it's a single one-sentence authorization for the federal health agency, and then it's a $14 million appropriation, which would be spent which would have to be spent on grants to state agencies, nonprofits like our organization, universities, and tribes would be the 4 eligibles.
Okay. And now, how has the bill been influenced by the gambling expansion that we're seeing across the U.S.? Obviously, the federal internet gambling, the regulated proposals that are currently pending, have those impacted and influenced the way that this is taking shape?
I think a little bit. It's created an environment where at the national level people are recognizing that gambling is a large national issue. We would also say a large public health issue. Because right now at the state level, there's still at least a dozen states that have no public support whatsoever for problem gambling programs. And many of these are large gaming states. These aren't just states with a little bit of charitable bingo here and there. States with lotteries that make over $2 billion a year, for example. So it's really helped us. It's really helped create an environment where we can go to the Hill and try and educate people that regardless of where you are on legalized gambling, preventing youth from developing gambling problems and making sure that you're minimizing these social costs is a bipartisan, non-controversial issue. And in fact, frankly, a lot of members are surprised that there is no federal dedicated spending right now. And a lot of members are surprised that, frankly, they don't know that there's a special withholding tax on gambling winnings that brings in, $7 billion is a lot of money to you and I. In the federal context, maybe not so much, but it's still a pretty big chunk of change.
Exactly. So, could I get your insight also in terms of what is critical from a federal regulated internet gambling framework in terms of player protection and consumer protection? There were some amendments made to the Frank bill earlier this summer. Do you feel there are any issues that still need to be addressed, or in terms of the consumer protection amendments that have been added? Are those adequate, or are there still issues that need to be looked at that have been missed at this point?
I think first we should say we're neutral on HR 2267. The National Council is neutral on any bill that's not exclusively problem gambling related. That being said, consumer protection, social responsibility, responsible gaming, is a crucial element of this, because it's really the first time the federal government has legalized a certain segment of the industry. Most gambling in the United States is left to the state level or to the tribal level. So for the very first bill out of the gate, having good responsible gaming protections is crucial. But it places us in a strange situation, because most of the responsible gaming regulations are at the state level. Yeah. So they're very state specific. It's been very hard to so we don't have a set of recommendations for this bill. We've certainly, there's some modifications we've suggested, most of which were accepted.
Okay.
But most of the other problematic part is the way this bill is drafted legislatively. The actual regulations are left to the Treasury Department to enumerate. And so that makes it very difficult for us, because if it's not in the bill, it's not in the bill. And so our effort is not really on the Frank bill. Our effort is going to be with the Treasury Department if and when it passes.
And interesting that you say that. Would you be willing to speculate on your thoughts on the if and when?
I don't think it'll go this year. I think there's a lot of factors that are lining up against it. You know, it's an election year, and I just think it's a big hurdle right now. I think eventually it will inevitably pass, especially as we're seeing state lotteries aggressively move into the online gaming space. And I think that's going to create more pressure on the state governments. I mean, obviously they've got a tremendous fiscal, deficit
exactly.
right now.
Exactly.
But I really think the state lotteries are going to take the lead, and as they move forward, you're going to have more and more, I think, federal legislatures that are going to see that state experience and think that this is not so bad. And from the National Council's perspective, it's just merely a new way of delivering existing forms of gambling. While there are certainly some risks in the online environment, there are risks in delivering gambling online. In essence, it's still gambling.
Yeah.
And it's the interaction of the individual with the game, why they're gambling and how they're gambling that makes a difference, not what they're, necessarily how they're doing it. So, we're I guess in one way, we're content neutral, we're internet neutral. It does, if you're delivering poker via cell phone, web, live, video, that's not as material to us as to whether or not, it's, again, some of the specifics of the interaction. So that's why, it strikes us a little bit odd that people are so, some people that are so in opposition to this bill have absolutely no problem with their state doing the exact same thing, just delivered in a different way. So we've always, because for the last 38 years, we've been looking at gambling policy as a health issue. Gambling is a health issue, just like we don't make distinctions between types of alcohol when we look at alcohol policy.
Right.
We tend not to make those same distinctions when we look at gambling, but most everyone else does. So for us, it's the brouhaha over internet gambling is a little bit, just misses the mark a little bit.
Okay. Well, thank you again. It's been a pleasure to speak with you, and thank you very much.
Absolutely.